Hello, everybody, and welcome to the May 13th, 2021 Ashland Planning Board meeting. Tonight we have a public hearing for Zero Magunko Road site plan. Actually, first, you want to, Emma, tell people how to join if they want to join in, because we have a couple of public hearings.
Yes, thank you, Dale. So if anyone watching at home would like to join the meeting via Zoom, the link is found in the agenda, which is posted on the Ashland website, ashlandmass.com, or you can go to zoom.us and enter the meeting ID 865-1264-6250 and the passcode 541553. You can also join by phone by dialing 1-646-876-9923 and enter the same meeting ID and passcode.
All right, thank you. All right, so we're going to have first a public hearing, Zero Magunko Road site plan review, continued from April 22nd meeting, and I believe they're going to continue that again. Then we have a public hearing for the covered porch bylaw amendment, continued from April 22nd. And then we're going to have a public hearing for the Ashland downtown zoning amendment that we're trying to get on the next warrant. And then a review of 12 pond building color and first floor windows, continuing on that, and then some administrative things. So first is Zero Magunko Road, and I believe they want to continue again, right?
Dale, thank you. Yes, I received an email from the applicant's engineer, and still it's the same old story concerning that project. They a rendering that is appropriate to bring in front of the planning board. So again, I've asked the applicant to request a continuance and move it back until 2 more weeks. Hopefully, I haven't received any renderings as of late, and so still the engineer is still waiting for the applicant and to produce some sort. So it's up to the board if we want to kick it out a week or give them a full month. It's up to the board. The next planning board meeting, I believe, is going to be on May 20. May 27th?
Did they state how long they wanted the continuance for, or just said we want to continue?
They said 2 weeks. I can look at the memo. I can look at the email very quickly if you just want to.
Is there a real possibility that they'll have it this time?
Probably, because I don't want to say EA or I don't want to.
We've been doing this almost every meeting now for a while.
We have for about the last 5 meetings, and I've been expressing to the applicant's attorney the frustration of the board.
Well, if they requested 2 weeks, then we'll go with that, I guess, because that's.
You can just sorry, I'm just getting settled. It was. Request April 20. I'm sorry.
So we'll need to vote to request or approve an extension.
Yeah, they said. They said 2 weeks, but I think it would be appropriate with the election coming up, Dale, to ask them to continue it to the first meeting in June.
So, or will they be okay with it? I mean, if they requested 2 weeks, we can just say no. 4 weeks is better.
Yeah, we can do that.
I just want to make sure we don't, if that's what if they actually want to come in 2 weeks. I guess it's up to us to schedule it if we can or don't want to, right?
So in the email I received,
you think
actually,
you're talking with them, so I don't know if you would probably have a better idea.
So I just grabbed the email that I received this morning, and he actually asked for a read verbatim. Is Peter? I spoke with George Connor, who is representing the applicant, George Connor's the attorney, about moving forward with a June 7th date for Magunko. George is still waiting for the rendering, so he would like to hold off for June 7th. If you have
Okay.
any questions, please give me a call. And that's why, so the June 7th meeting, looking at my calendar, which I think is the first meeting in June,
Yeah.
would be the date they're requesting.
Okay. Was there a motion to continue the public hearing for Zero Magunko site plan review until June 7th at 7:15? 7:15 is a good time.
Just to take that back, the first meeting in June will be on June 10th. So I think they got their dates mixed up. So I think we should just move it to the first meeting in June.
June 10th.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a motion to move the public or continue the public hearing on Zero Magunko site plan review to June 10th at 7:15?
So moved.
I second that.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye, passes 5-0-0. All right, now we have a public hearing on the covered porch bylaw amendment, continued from April 22nd. The Ashland Planning Board will hold public hearing on Thursday, April 22nd at 7:15 p.m. via Zoom to see if the town will amend Section 4 dimensional requirements of Chapter 282 of the Town of Ashland zoning bylaw by adding a new Section 4.1.6 covered open air front porch as follows. Crossouts are eliminations in bold, underline is new language. Should I read the whole thing or just we have it? Can we post it up?
Yeah, I think we're just going to post it up on the screen.
Okay.
And
And
Dale,
before we get too far, I mean, I see that Mr. Zamudo and Mr. Chen are both online, and we're not going to be getting to their items for a while. So I assume, right, we might want to give them a little bit of if we know how much time it's going to be, so that they don't necessarily have to hang out during these other things that we have. We have an approximate time that we can give them for their agenda item.
I think, I'm not speaking for the board. I think, maybe a half hour to 40 minutes, we can kind of roll through the public hearing stuff. And just to let Jim and Charlie know where they are on the agenda.
Okay, so that it might be 8 o'clock.
I would say 8 o'clock.
You guys don't have to hang around and watch all this other stuff. All right, so first we'll have comments. They looks like we added one line in there.
Yeah, so Dale, if I may, just from the last meeting, when we first opened the public hearing for this zoning change, I think we reviewed it, and then as we took public comment, Catherine Jerzik, resident who attended the meeting, brought up a situation where she felt that should be looked at by town council, and so therefore I, acting as the town planner, I took the comments back that were collected from that meeting from the residents, and I posed that question to to Lisa Mead, town council, just concerning what would happen in the opportunity, in the scenario. I would say that a covered porch was built off of a house, and then the house was the house caught fire and or was demolished. Would that covered porch, would that covered porch that was built through a bylaw, as proposed that we're talking about tonight, would that actually mean that house, right, that the foundation of the house or the footprint of the house would also include that covered porch? And so with that said, I'm bringing this question to Lisa Mead, Town Council. She reviewed the situation that was proposed, and she, with her guidance, she added number 7, which is highlighted in yellow here. And just to read, the volume of a covered porch, of a covered open air front porch shall not be considered part of the volume of a non-conforming structure being rebuilt under section 3.37. However, the covered open air front porch may be rebuilt in kind after a demolition, destruction, or catastrophe. And so that was this additional language was recommended by Town Council.
Okay. Any comments from board members?
I mean, I think number 7 is a good thing to add. That I think it takes away the I believe anyway, it kind of takes away the possible loophole that that Kate brought up at our last meeting. I do wonder, here we had also talked about a timeline on this as part of this, that this bylaw is only applicable to structures in existence at the time of the bylaw, so that someone doesn't build a new house right up to their setback line and then the next year apply for a porch, right? That's not our intention, right? So it was for existing structures only that got wrapped into zoning that wasn't in effect when those buildings were built. Isn't that right?
I remember that, yes.
So, and I don't see that here. So that would be a cause of concern that I would have, that someone can build up to their setback line and then a year later apply for a front porch.
So now if they build a house with a front porch, it has to be behind the setback?
Right. They would have to adhere to their setback lines. Because I assume the premise isn't to just reduce the setback for every house, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any comments about that? I mean, personally, I don't think, if I was building a house, I wouldn't go to the trouble of building it up to the line and then trying to add on later to try to get closer up, but there might be people that would do that.
I think it's just one of those loopholes that we have to address. That's not the attention. That's not the intention of the bylaw. So this is, at least my understanding was, this is for houses already in existence that most of the times the setbacks were created after the houses were built and after the zoning was made, before the zoning was made, and so they're kind of stuck in a way, and that's why a lot of them become non-conforming. So it wasn't meant to apply for new construction that should adhere to the zoning we have in place.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I agree. I thought it made sense to make this applicable only to structures that were existing as of the date of the of this. I thought that kind of was like a logical way to deal with the concerns, but that was I thought that was going to go in as well.
So if we add that in, we have to go back and start over?
I don't believe so, because I think it surrounds the premise and the nature that we were trying to first propose with the original bylaw. I apologize. You know, that we don't see that here tonight. And I will go back and add that in.
I mean, does anyone else on the committee have input on that? That was my understanding all along. This was for houses that were already in existence.
Right. Agreed.
And there may be a situation where they're building, I don't know, to me, you're right that someone could do that. But you would think if they're building a new house, they would build everything they want rather than build it and then come back later.
Well, I think
But maybe we can put that in there.
yeah, I think it falls under the same thing as number 7. That you would think people would, if they had a porch, that they would put back a porch. But that's giving them the benefit of the doubt, and we don't know who them is, you know? So,
All right, so then should we continue this? Pete, you can,
Yeah, we can continue this to the next meeting. You know, I can work, you know, I'll draft up, you know, number 8, and I can just, you know, add what we're talking about is this bylaw is only applicable to structures and or homes that were in existence at the time of this proposed bylaw, I would say. And then I can go from there.
my other question was that, and I think this is covered in here, given that Lisa reviewed it, that this is really only meant, it says residential districts, but it's really only meant for residences within residential districts. Is that right? I mean, there may be businesses within residential districts, or is it meant for everybody?
well, if there's a business in a house, that was a house at some point, it might be, I would think it would still be okay to add a porch if it enhanced the house and made it a little better. So,
Yeah, like some of the dentist's office on Main Street.
yeah.
I can pose that question, you know, concerning, you know, residential districts versus residential structures. I see that's where what would the difference between those two terms, you know, what the difference between those two words would be for the bylaw.
Yeah, but I agree with Dale that it could be like on Main Street, there's like a former house that's now used as a dentist office. And so something like that I think would be fine, but I'm picturing, you know, just a larger building that was never residential. And maybe now is adding, you know, it might have a large, you know, very large facade, and would be adding a very large porch on. I'm just wondering what, you know, to try to keep it toward the intention of what we're doing.
So we'd have to specify, because it's a business, you can't say just the residents. So we'd have to figure that out, how we would define. So if it's a residence, if it's a business in a house or a business in a building, I have to sort that out, I guess.
Well, I think at this point, it could be a residential, like it has to be a residence. It has to be, you know, a non-business. But, you know, perhaps a business, you know, could apply via special permit, which they probably always can anyway,
Yeah.
you know. So we leave them apply through a special permit process, but this is for homeowners.
So as a business like that dentist office, that now is considered commercial, right? So if someone bought that back and turned it back into a house, then it would be residential again, right?
Mhm.
So limit it to residential, residents, homes. Got all that down, Pete?
I got it all down, Dale. Yeah, I took notes, and I'll make some changes, and I can send it out to council and have her review it, and then I can send it back to the board for any opinions. Obviously, any opinions you can just send directly to me, and then I can put it on the next meeting's agenda. But I do. Oh, Joe?
Can I ask a question on timing? So this is going forward for the town meeting, this spring town meeting, right?
Mhm.
And so obviously from a timing perspective, we can have on the 27th, we can have our meeting and vote this, take public comment, continue to take public comment, and that works on timing.
It's tight, when you talk about the kind of I'm going to say the rules of the road in preparation for a town meeting. Typically, the planning board's allowed to meet up to the day or prior to town meeting, as long as there is a report. In this case, there'll be a verbal report given concerning what the vote was and what the discussion was, or if the planning board decides to vote to support and to not support.
So when does the warrant close?
The warrant closes very soon. So that's the other thing, right? I'm going to have to make changes to this very quickly, and then send that to the selectman's office, and then they can put the warrant together. And then, this probably will have to be submitted to the warrant prior to the planning board next meeting.
Do we, but do we need to just post, just to get this thing signed off by the board? Do we need to do a brief meeting next week to get this, to vote this in and press this forward if the board so feels? I mean, the 27th feels late because you're going to have a warrant that's basically printed and done, right? I mean, the FinCom meeting's the 24th. It's pretty late. So I just, I think, I mean, and am I correct? Is this Dale's last meeting tonight?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but like, would it be beneficial, Peter, to post and schedule a brief meeting to deal with this matter next week, to get this out of the last minute stretch on this town meeting?
And Pete, don't we have to have the meeting before Wednesday?
Yeah. So that's we have a, we can do that.
What's the Wednesday deadline? I'm sorry.
So Wednesday, we have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the administrative agenda items, which is for the housing production plan, which has been an ongoing project that's been ongoing. So, last week I can kind of try to figure something out to maybe meet prior to the Board of Selectmen meeting, if that would be appropriate. But in that case, we could hold a meeting, open it up, and then close it, and then review this fairly quickly, and then I'll move over and reopen our meeting with the Board of Selectmen to talk about the housing production plan.
Because I just feel like the language that we're asking to put in here regarding the timing, and not on houses after, built, houses in place as of the date of this change. It's pretty straightforward sentence. It's not a big deal. I mean, to me, the complication with businesses that we've just kicked over right now feels pretty late in the game. It's never the intention. It's not where we're going here. This was trying to address homeowners, residences. Like, I think we're just making this messier than we need to be at the last second, and creating waves, right? Like, I'll do whatever we need to do on the 19th or whenever next week to do a brief meeting to get this thing done and buttoned up. We've worked hard on this. Like, let's get this thing done. I just feel like we're causing just waves we don't need to. So,
Yeah, I agree. We have residential structure in there, that should be a residence. And if that, I don't think we need to address businesses at this time. But we did talk about that deadline last time, you know, and it just didn't make it in here, so.
So we can vote to support this with the amendments as, you know, stated, right? And Joe, you could, you know, as we read it right now, you know, as the amendments, which would include the addition of item number 8, which would include the phrase within the sentence stated that the bylaw is only applicable for structures
Residential structures.
in residential structures in existence at the time of the adoption of said bylaw.
I'm comfortable doing that, Peter,
Okay.
as a means, if the rest, please, for the rest of the board, speak up.
I agree. If it doesn't have to start over, it's just the added language, I think we could do that.
Okay. You know, if you want to make a vote after we finish up comments, we could do that. And then I'll draft it up and I can, you know, send it back to, you know, legal counsel just to make sure it fits fits all the requirements. And then, you know, I can submit it to the town warrant as printed with the amendments as stated, I would say.
And will we have to approve the amendment word for word kind of, or just with the amendment, proposed
Okay.
amendment excluding houses built after this?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
I've done
Anyone
that.
else on the board have any other comment?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Anybody in public? You see anybody, Emma?
I see Catherine's iPad has their hand raised,
Okay,
if they'd like to.
Catherine.
Catherine Jersey, 11 Rodman Road. I had that concern about the business. It sounds like that language may take care of it, because again, if we're looking for unintended consequences. And then I think that one, so the 7 talks about volume, but I do not believe that lines up with the way that we describe the rebuilding on pre-existing non-conforming. I don't think it mentions volume. I think it talks about footprint. So I don't know that covers it. And then that's one thing. And secondly, with that, are we allowed by the section 7 you're proposing adding, since it would be footprint, is that going to override or can the state law about rebuilding override and count that as a new footprint? I mean, I would imagine there's a way to make this tight. So I appreciate that we're looking at it. And I guess, I don't know how long you worked on this, but you can see how it takes a lot of work to try to get it right. And even then we sometimes get problems. So I have the business concern. I do have a concern still about 7 because of the volume, and I don't believe our zoning talks about that in the rebuild and how that works with the state law.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Emma?
I think though, under the 3.3.7 on item 2, it does say buildings as reconstructed shall be located on the same footprint as the original non-conforming structure, shall be only as great in volume or area as the original non-conforming structure. So it does mention volume, but in that regard, I think we could easily put in shall not be considered part of the volume or footprint of a non-conforming structure. Yeah, we could put both terms in there, but it does say volume, but it's a little hard to interpret sometimes, you know, how that is interpreted. So it could be not as part of the footprint or volume.
Just speaking, I reading it too, I see this, the back and forth, it does have the, you know, section 3.37B does use both volume and footprint. And I think adding to section 7 the volume of a covered open air porch shall not be considered part of the volume or footprint of a non-conforming structure being rebuilt under section 3.37. That could be added, that term or footprint could be added to the sentence for clarification matters.
Okay. Anybody else on the board that's? All right, any other public comments? Anybody raising their hand or?
I don't see anyone else.
Catherine, is your hand? Oh, sorry.
What?
I didn't know if Catherine's hand was still up or if it was taken down. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I think, can you just ask town council if we can override that footprint or that's good enough? Because I know that is pretty sticky we always revert to that state law. But I think it's on the right track, and I think people will be happy when the few people that want to build a porch. I doubt there's boatloads of people that want to. I haven't seen people lobbying for this. Let's put it that way. So
there's more than you expect, I would say. So I think
Cool.
it's and that's another item we'll get into in administrative matters. But
that's the reason I proposed this thing, is because I got a lot of people that will probably actually do this.
cool.
Yeah, so if the board sees fit, we could add or footprint to number 7, and then I can with the
Date restriction.
and then add 8, which would be a restriction stating said bylaw here within this bylaw is only applicable to structures we can say residential structures. Which were in existence prior to the adoption of this bylaw. And that prior to the adoption of that bylaw, I would actually change to the actual date of the town meeting, the proposed date of the town meeting.
I agree,
I agree.
because that's the date it actually passes into. It's
All right,
approved.
then I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second that,
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. Passes 5-0-0. Now I'll entertain a motion to agree to forward this with a town warrant, right? We're just sending it over to put on the town warrant.
Dale, I think the appropriate motion would be to motion to support and to move forward the amendment as proposed with the additional amendments to
The
section.
date?
Excuse me?
To the date, construction date, and
To the construction date, yes.
the volume.
Into the addition of the term footprint into item number 7 after
Volume.
the word volume. And just for the record, item number 8 shall read, here within this bylaw is only applicable for residential structures that were in existence at the time of the adoption of said bylaw. And then I will also, once the date of that town meeting is nailed down, and confirmation will be, I would say, tomorrow, I will add the date of the proposed town meeting, which at this point is going to be June 12th.
Okay, so is there a motion to,
I can make a motion that we move this article into a warrant for town meeting with the change to item 7 that includes the word footprint, and also with item 8 about the date of effectiveness as just read by Peter Matchik.
and volume? change to add volume in.
Actually, it's an adding of the word footprint. The volume's already in there.
Okay,
So you move, so I second your motion.
all in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. It passes 5-0-0.
Ooh.
Okay.
Dale's bylaw.
That
Dale's
was
porch
a
bylaw.
lot. That was a lot. When I started this, the one I was reading was about 2 paragraphs long, and I thought this will be easy.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're having problems in that town or not. Okay, now we're going to have a open a public hearing for the Ashland Downtown Zoning Amendment. The Ashland Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 13th at 7:15 p.m. via Zoom to see if the town will vote to amend the Town of Ashland zoning bylaw, Chapter 282, Section 8.5, Ashland Downtown District. The purpose of the amendment is to update the Ashland Downtown zoning district to better serve the community by adding clarity to the existing bylaw, by updating embedded diagrams and dimensional requirements, including building setbacks and building heights. Language is available at the town clerk's office if you need to see it. Okay. I think first we're gonna have, are we having a presentation?
Correct,
We had a study on the downtown. And so I think Chris is here to just review the whole package that you put together and where we're at. Chris?
Sure. Okay. Pete, do you want me to start, or did you want to say anything first, or just should I take it away?
Nope. I think I just want to say, this is, I would say take it away, because I think your PowerPoint describes the road we have taken.
It will kind of give a summary of everything where we're at. So
All righty, will do. So I assume everybody can see my screen. Thank you everyone for having me tonight. It's been nice to kind of be back now and kind of wrap this up. Here we go. So yeah, tonight I'm just going to kind of bring it all back to kind of how we started and now and kind of summarize at a sort of fairly high level everything that we've sort of done with the downtown zoning. Just as a reminder from the context, this was kind of part of under the framework of a whole kind of host of initiatives that the town's been undergoing to help revitalize the downtown. And so this is one of those pieces to the puzzle. The town had applied for some state grant funding. MAPC supplemented that to provide additional funding to work on this zoning project. So in terms of process, of course, it started with kind of an understanding of what the existing regulations were. We did some site visits to understand the context of the downtown as it is today. And we reviewed some of the various planning documents, as well as some of the couple of development proposals that have actually gone in the area. The heart of the process, I think, really started with the survey that we had let out, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, as well as the meetings with the board. I put approximately 7. To be honest, I've actually lost count, but I think it was somewhere in that vicinity. So we've had a lot of opportunities to work very closely, get into the real nitty gritty of the details. And so I think, what has resulted is something that has, very much sort of tailored to really the needs of the town. And it's very much community driven. The survey, as a reminder, we had a good response rate. This was an online survey. We had over 300 responses. I'm not here to this slide isn't intended to kind of go through in detail the results of that survey, but rather just to remind you of sort of the format that it took, where we looked at the existing zoning and did sort of a diagram of what you could build under it, and asked people sort of what they thought. And in this case, people generally liked it, but there were opportunities for improvement. And so then what we did was sort of an exercise where we showed a bunch of we isolated different modifications to it. So For example, this next slide, it's a little bit subtle, but this slide now actually has a bit of a front setback, which the first slide didn't. And we asked people what they thought about that. And so in this case, that was something that people really liked, and it was pretty overwhelming. And so that kind of helped inform the recommendations that we had put together for the board in terms of potential kind of future modifications. So in terms of what we ended up proposing and the changes that we ended up making, some of it was format changes. So the dimensional and design standards table, there were 3 separate tables for each of the 3 sub-districts. We consolidated that and streamlined that into one. There was previously the tables contained some design elements, and there were a little bit of issues in terms of whether these elements were sort of recommended versus required. And so what we did was we took all of the design pieces and put it in its own section. And then for the design, we bulked up what was previously there, and we clarified to kind of make clear what is sort of required versus something that might be more of a guideline. We didn't change many of the dimensional standards other than, as I mentioned, the front yard setback was one that came up. And that really covers what the changes were. They were essentially modifications to your existing zoning. So this is just the example of the front yard of the consolidated table that is now in the proposed zoning. We did change the front yard setback, which was originally 0. We changed that to either 8 or 15 feet, depending on as the case might be. And really, this was, for one thing, people were very much wanted this as part of in the survey. That was clear. But also one of the questions we asked were about some of the goals for the downtown. And one of them was more seating and gathering spaces, so that this would actually really help achieve that goal. So I'll go through now some of the other design elements that we talked about. One was, again, on the survey, people really were very much in favor of, for where there's commercial on the ground floor, having a high percentage of windows. So today there's nothing in the zoning to actually require that. So we put some requirements in. So this then is, again, without going into the details, just shows the format. So we supplemented the text with some simple, but I think effective diagrams to help convey how to actually calculate, the required percentages that would be there for the different uses. We also talked about modulating the building through various architectural interventions. And again, this was something that the survey respondents felt was an important thing to do, to kind of add some visual interest to especially to larger buildings, to avoid monotony. It's also something that is used, I think, quite effectively at 21 Main Street, the recent development. And that building, my understanding, has been generally well received by the community. And so we kind of use that as a model. And again, same sort of format where we have a simple diagram, some text. In this case, it applies to buildings that are greater than 60 feet in length. And then it requires this sort of modulation every 45 feet. And we give sort of a menu of options for how you can achieve that. The existing zoning also has a number of building diagrams. And there were, I think that, it's great that they're there. I think, now that we're in this point where we can sort of take a step back and see how that's working, I think there were some opportunities to improve them. There were a few issues that had come up. One was that some of the buildings in the diagrams were things that actually weren't probably even appropriate, that we wouldn't want to see in the downtown. Another issue was that it was presented as a way that seemed to indicate that a developer had to sort of choose one of those buildings diagrams and essentially copy that. And so we tried to, we clarified that now in the future zoning. We have different building diagrams, and we clarify that, these are guides for development, and this kind of illustrates the principles, but you shouldn't actually just copy it. We want architects to sort of do their job and create well-designed buildings. And then roof styles was another thing that came up. And this was one of our more recent discussions. So sort of where we ended up landing on it was that there are different types of roofs that are allowed by right, such as the front gable, side gable, hip. And then there are roof styles that are allowed by special permit, such as, but not limited to, mansard roofs and flat roofs. We also specified what the appropriate pitch would be. It sounds like my understanding is the board settled on a 7-12 ratio, which I think is good. And again, there is the opportunity that a developer could come with a lower pitch, but then it would be through a special permit. So there's still the opportunity, again, for well-designed buildings to have that flexibility. But I think it's sort of wise that now the onus is on the developer if they want to deviate from what is by right. And then the last piece was, we talked about sort of various components like dormers. Again, this was something that was very popular in the survey. And so, having these architectural features are required now. And again, we aren't sort of prescribing exactly what you need to have or exactly how it needs to look, but we're just providing a menu of options. So that, I think, covers really everything that we've done in the zoning. Obviously, this was at a high level. There were some other sort of minor modifications, such as we in the notes of the table, we changed the rear yard setbacks. If it's abutting a residential area, you have to have a greater rear yard setback as one example of that. We also have talked about some things for the future and things that the board could consider down the road for a future town meeting. I'm not going to go through those now just because I didn't want to kind of muddy the waters and confuse things, and just kind of focus on what the actual subject of this public hearing was. But yeah, that was all my slides. So I can leave the slides up if people want, in case you want to refer to them, or I can stop my share.
Well, I'm going to start off because my first question is 8.5.6 lot dimensions and standards under section 4, rear yards. Where a property abuts a residential district, the rear yard must be a minimum of 30 feet, which may be reduced to no more than 12 feet. So does that mean that it has to either be 30 or less than 12? Or is that maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it sounds like if it may be reduced to no more than 12 feet.
Yeah, you can't be less than 12. Like you can't be, I mean, I think, I don't know, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the intent is that it's between 30 and 12 essentially.
But this right here says reduced to no more than 12 feet. That would mean it would be less than 12 feet.
No,
I think that's just worded wrong. That was my first one. It should say reduced to no less than 12 feet, or right?
Yes.
That's
correct.
just kind of confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the first one. Second one is on the table of uses. It says permitted residential uses, multifamily dwellings, 3 or more. Yes, special permit for ABC, right? So that's just only residential, correct? That would be a residential building.
And this is everything that's in your existing. We didn't make any changes.
I know, but here's my question. Notes on Ashland Town District table of uses. Ground floors of buildings which front on streets shall be reserved for non-residential uses. So if somebody wants to build a residential, which is allowed here, multifamily dwellings, 3 or more dwellings, yes, it's allowed in A, B, and special permit in C. How does that work if they can't use the first floor for, is that just parking, or how to it?
Could you just point to that note, where that note is that you were
Right under the table, notes on the district. It's one directly underneath the table of uses.
Yeah.
And then it says right under that, okay, so a building is allowed with residents only, but then right under it, it says the first floor cannot be used for non-residential uses, except for if it's a building behind it. There's a couple exceptions. And then there's other cases where the special permit granting authority feels that street front residential uses will not have adverse impact. So
Yeah.
wouldn't those have to be under just special permit?
Dale, I think so. If I may, the notes at the bottom of the table only reference where in the use table, the Y, SP, or N has that associated number. So in the mixed use, sorry, they're not
Okay.
numbered, but on page, what page am I on? Page 3, the top dwelling units in retail, office, and or other allowed business in separate building. So that has the 1 next to the Y.
Okay, I get it.
And then down below where it says like accessory use only, that applies to like outdoor storage of products for sale. You see SP2.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so Peter can correct me, or Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it applies to just the residential buildings.
Okay. So they can build just only a residential building in these districts.
Thank you,
So,
Emma.
okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, this is stuff that it's good we talk about it. It's great that we talk about it, but I think this is stuff that's been transferred that is still is currently right now in the existing bylaws.
Correct.
Because we didn't make, there was no changes proposed to the actual use table per se.
Correct. We would need to make that change to, as the previous comment about the changing it to no less than as it relates to the rear yard setback.
Okay.
That's unchangeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get that now. I see where there's one of them has a 1, so that that refers to that one only. My other last comment would be I had talking to people in town, the 3-story issue of limiting the 3 stories. I guess the purpose of that is to reduce the density.
That was the board's recommendation to do that. That wasn't actually my recommendation. So I did that because I was asked to by the board.
And the only reason I brought that up is because like the 1050 Main Street, I know it's supposed to be a 40R new zoning and everything, but if it doesn't go through, it's going to be under the downtown. And I was asking Pete today, where do you measure the 38 feet from? Because that lot is probably 20 feet in the back lower than street level. And they're going to have 10 feet under the average line that could be another floor. And I don't know if the purpose is to just reduce the volume of what's going on or reduce that's one thing. But if we say you can't, if you can keep it at 38 feet, because if they do 38 feet there from the average, the building on the street's only going to be 20 something feet probably because of the difference in the lot. And then, possibly in the back, I could see they could easily have a 4th floor and still be way under the 38 feet at street level. And unless we're trying to keep it so that we want to keep the volume down and reduce, that's one thing. But I thought we were trying to get more commercial and more people downtown. And so there's a situation where maybe, I don't know, maybe with a special permit or something, you could do 4 floors that's just the situation that stood out to me, because you drive by that and in the back, it could easily be 4 floors and it'd still be 2 floors up on the street.
I think that's a good point, Dale. I don't think even though we walked around that building, at that time, we weren't discussing it in that context. And it seems to me from all of our discussions, when we got to that 38 feet by looking at the recent building and height in Ashland and how we felt about it and the reaction of residents in the town to that building height. And so that's kind of how we got to 38 feet, 3 stories. But I really think that was about at the normal street level of Ashland, which otherwise seems to me to be pretty flat, except for that, maybe there are other hidden sites like that, but I don't, that site certainly, in my opinion, and I'd like to hear from other people on the board, you know, that site wasn't our intention. I think, I think it was about
I'm-
building at Main Street, at the Main Street level, not being higher than 38 feet, which would be required for its next door neighbor on a flat lot, I guess. Does everyone else, how does everyone else feel about that?
And
Yeah,
my point was just that, I know that's probably the one thing to do it, and they're trying to get a 40R, but if that doesn't happen, they're gonna be under this new zoning, and are they gonna be limited and not be able to do? So maybe if there's a mechanism in there where with a special permit, you could do floors where it worked. Rather than have that when, you know, I understand you come in from one side of town, you're gonna come in the back, you see the back and it's tall. But coming from the other way, it's gonna look like a 1-story building. And then someone can come in and build next to it a 3-story, 38-foot building. And, you know, just covering.
I mean, I think our intention was that on Main Street, and I don't know the proper way to word this, that on Main Street, you measure up 38 feet. There's always weird ways of measuring height, but on Main Street, you measure up 38 feet. But we weren't saying in back, if your grade goes down, that you can't utilize that space. We never talked about it, but I think our main concern was keeping the main roads,
Yes,
some kind of
understand.
consistency.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we agreed
Yeah.
on. But however, on that site, if
Right, so
you
how do we
only do
correct
3
that?
stories and he wants to
Yeah.
go 38 feet above street level, they're gonna
Yeah.
be 20-foot ceilings or something.
Right, so how do we correct that in the zoning, if that's something we want to correct? Is it, you know, I mean,
I mean,
I
if
don't know, does Chris
if
have a
someone can put
thought
a,
on that?
if
'Cause it is a
someone
very
can-
unusual site, I think in Ashland. Are there any others like it? That
there's some like the Telecom building, the first floor is halfway underground and in the back it's open, you can drive in but that's not even in this district, I don't think, but my whole point is that are we limiting the 3 floors to try to keep the volume down of how many units and people and everything? Because the concern was that from some people at town that if you limit to 3 stories, they're going to put in all residential and not worry about the commercial. And over the years, we've always tried to push the commercial downtown to get, you can walk to the store, you can walk to the business type of a thing. And if we limit that, and I don't know, you know, to me, it sounds like if you build a 4-story, 38-foot building, you'd have to scrunch down when you walked in each floor, but I don't know. But I'm saying there might be situations or other situations where they might want to put the first floor parking under a little bit, or I don't, you know what I mean?
And wasn't
So
that,
these are just questions that people have brought up since this thing's been posted to me. And I'm
Didn't we
just,
have yeah, but didn't we have where they could get a special permit if they wanted to build a little higher, and if they have, one of the recommendations was if they want to have commercial in the first floor and they come to us and I say we want additional height, weren't we going to give do it under a special permit? I thought that, no, okay.
no, we limited the height to just a cutoff point at 38 feet. But my whole point, the 38 feet, I think is a good, but the limiting the amount of floors was my question. And I just, if someone could explain, are we doing that because we want less stuff in each building and less people or traffic, or are we doing it for, you know what I mean? Because to me, it sounds like if you got the building at 38 feet and the outside is going to look a certain way. If there's 3 floors or 2 floors or 4 floors, is that, you know what I mean? If it's possible for someone to build a nice 38-foot high building with 4 floors, do we not want that? Or is that why we're limiting the floors? Because we don't want any 4-floor buildings. And I don't even know if it's possible anywhere. I think on that one, which will probably be a 40R, who knows, it might not even matter. But just question, these are people that I've talked to that throwing these questions to me, and I'm just asking. Because I think the height restriction is fine, but I think limiting to what they can do inside of that.
Well, just to jump in here real quick, the standing bylaw as it sits today, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no height limitation. It's just 3 stories, right? And so we landed on 38 feet because we did a comparison and we actually looked to see, I'm sorry, I had a computer glitch. My computer was gonna go to sleep, but
just one question. So Dale, to your question, I think on the zoning board on page 7, it does say that by special permit, you could get it to 48 inches.
It's
48 feet.
48 feet, but that's
only a
only
feature.
for features, for like architectural
Clock,
features.
you can only add a clock, you can't add commercial.
Cupola.
Yeah.
Okay.
Railing around the top or a little tower or something.
so just to go back to height, right now as it sits, there's 3 stories, there's no height there's no height number, right? As the bylaw sits today, there's a special permit to put a 4-story on the building. Looking at the projects that were proposed, that have been approved, which would be 21 Main Street, then 128 Main Street. Both of those buildings are 3 stories and they're 38 feet. And so I think that is how, after reviewing those 2 projects, seeing how they came out, that's how the board landed at that number. Dale, I understand, your concern with 10 to 50 Main Street, and just looking at the building height definition, a building height definition is the vertical distance from the grade plane to the average height of the highest roof surface. Now, I think it was all the intentions of this board is to make sure that the measurements were done from the street plane of Main Street, right? And then up. Obviously, 10 to 50 Main Street is a complex site. In grading, there's a lot of grading and vertical changes, right? And I think it's an old industrial building. And you have to think of industrial buildings have loading docks and they have the movement of product in and out. And that's why you may have those grading changes for, a number of different reasons. But I think the true basis of our decision, or correct me if I'm wrong, but the true basis of the board's decision was to say, okay, what is the measurement from street plane on Main Street going vertical to the existing building structures? Now, if we could make some changes to the bylaws to see how that measurement reads, and then go from there. But I am up for all things. I think we could take out 3 stories and just leave building height shall be 38 feet. It shall be measured from the street plane of Main Street. That could be a proposed solution that would be able to obviously reflect Dale's concern concerning the number of stories. And if somebody wanted to build a 4-story building under 38 feet, that's economical, then I guess I would be proven. They could prove to the board that that's the best solution for the site.
And just so, because it probably, they're in the process of getting the door. And to limit, and especially if you can go 38 feet from the road, that's huge in the back. So if we're trying to keep our buildings kind of in the same area downtown, to have one that looks like it's 1 story when, the first one, and then the next one might be next to it be 20, 30 feet higher.
Yeah.
I'm just questioning this, if anybody understands what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think we all do.
I think
I
our
think
main
there's 2
concern
different-
is the height. We don't want a bunch of tall buildings.
Yeah, there's 2 different questions going on here. One is particular about 10 to 50 Main Street that has a very unusual site. And I think we're all in agreement that our intention was 38 feet from Main Street. And then if it goes down lower below that, I don't want to speak for the board, but I don't think we weren't necessarily having a problem with that. It was about the way Main Street looks when you drive down Main Street. The other question about 3 or 4 stories on Main Street, not looking at 10 to 50 Main Street, I think was a question about looking at the buildings that have been done so far, the residents of Ashland, the reaction to those buildings, that the processes for 128 Main Street, Pond Street, and I heard, though I don't recall it at the time, 21 Main Street, even though there are only 3 stories, 38 feet, that none of them were easy processes. So that thinking about putting a 4th floor in there or going higher to allow for a 4th floor. I don't think the going higher, I just don't think it's what the residents want. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
So
My point was they're related, because if you can go 38 feet there and we don't mind if they go down lower, well, you have to kind of put a floor there, like something under there. So that might end up being 4 floors. That's all. And
right.
if
So
we
that
cut
would
it
be
in stone-
okay on that site. I guess that would be okay on that site.
But if
Because
so,
it's big.
but if we say you can't, it's only 3 floors. And
Right,
that's
so
the
how do we
bylaw,
fix it?
Then there's
I think-
no,
Right, so we
then
all
they're
get the
stuck.
problem. I
Yeah.
think we all get the problem, but that's a unique site. And then how do we fix it on that unique site? Is that a special permit? In which case we're like, oh yeah, we don't want a 20-foot high building on Main Street because it would look ridiculous. You can go down for it, it's a one site problem.
yeah.
So how do we make sure there's a way to address it, whether it's by special permit or whether it's, in this bylaw, or even if we want to say 4 floors, but it's by special permit, because we want to look at that and what they're cramming in there in 38
Exactly.
feet,
But at least they would have the option if things fell apart on a 40R and they were in our zoning, and rather than just going in, putting a 40B in and doing something, it might be worth it for them to come in if there's an option at least.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's common sense, but I'd be interested to hear what everyone else has to say too.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think our intent was clear regarding tall buildings downtown and keeping them in scope and in frame of reference with town hall and other existing structures. I don't know if this one is an easy thing to fix right here, right now, where we are. I mean, you don't want to do spot zoning, right? We don't want to get into that. I'm not sure.
I'm just afraid if we do it and set it in there and it eliminates, even the possibility of something, at least have an option or something maybe. And these are concerns. And another concern that someone told me was that, like I said, if it's 3 floors and they want commercial on the bottom, then depending on the lot size, sometimes you could put the commercial in front because,
I mean, look at Lunkers. That's what Lunkers
They're
is.
gonna-
It's a house that they get a commercial dropped in front of it at some
Yeah.
level.
But their concern was that if developer comes in and they're going to just build residential. That was the concern. I'm just passing that on, that if they have only 3 floors, and I don't know what they're thinking about, if there's a circumstance that they're thinking, but they're worried that if you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because they're trying to get people and businesses downtown, that if a developer can only build 3 floors, it's going to be just all residential. That was the concern.
I think you're not going to get more than 3 floors most places at 38 feet. It's probably
That's what I'm thinking too, but I'm just passing on concern for some citizens in Ashland that were.
I guess I would just jump in for the earlier part of the conversation about the height. I mean, from the survey, I will say, I think, Dale, you are correct that the concern isn't so much about the number of people. It's really, it's the visual. It's like, what does the downtown feel like? So you want, and I think then that leads us then to the solution that Pete had noted that, you know, as long as we're measuring the ground plane from the street side, I think that would take care of the issue. I will say, I just took a quick look at your ground plane definition, and I think based upon the existing ground plane definition, it wouldn't be that way necessarily, although I did read it very quickly. So I think we might just need to add a sentence along the lines of what Pete was mentioning about how we measure, where we're measuring the height from.
Yeah, and just to jump in, Chris, I've been flipping back and forth in the bylaws here, and actually there's two definitions I just kind of want to bring out to light. Number one is building height, right? And the building height is the vertical distance from the grade plane to the average height of the highest roof surface, right? So that's your typical traditional building height. And then when you get into it, then a little in another definition, which would also pertain to height, is an above ground level, right? Which almost is a story, I would say, in my eyes, right? And that's the measurement of height from the average grade of the site around the perimeter of the base of the structure to the highest point of the structure, right? So if you are starting to talk about, okay, how are you going to measure this, right? I think you could do a little bit, you can kind of, you know, the above ground level. In this case, I think, yeah, you go around 50 Main Street, 10 to 50 Main Street, and actually there's 4 buildings on that entire site, right? And then you're averaging the 4 corners of the building, and then you're kind of coming up from there. I think that's what the biggest concern is right there. However, I think we are looking at just one site in particular, and I do want to just note that I think, you know, with the development of this bylaw, you know, the town has been, yes, talking about a 40R process for this site. And so really the development of this bylaw was really done excluding 10 to 50 Main Street with the assumption that we're going to have to go through another zoning processes, right? However, not knowing the development in the processes moving forward on that site, because there are a lot of moving parts. I think Dale's question is, maybe in the future, maybe that does, if that process fails within the 40R process, or it doesn't take off for, you know, for whatever reasons, maybe this would actually give an option to the owner of that site to use the existing bylaws. Is that correct, Dale?
Yes. Well, just not limit them to 3 floors. That was, I mean,
and
because it could look really good and have 4 floors, but do we, you know? And I know it's only one place and they're trying to get a 40R, but if it fails, which is, there's no guarantee it'll go through, and the developer wants to develop something different, and he makes an agreement, finally gets somebody that wants to do it, then is he going to be stuck? Even if it's the only one in town, it's the main one coming in, and he's going to be stuck with having to build there's something that has 15, 20-foot ceilings, or, you know what I mean? And I know it's only one property, but it's a big property. And I'm just saying, if we set it in stone, that you know, that if there's at least an option for, you know, them to present something that would work.
So the only thing with this, Dale, is like throughout this discussion, we've consistently, I'm not going to say avoided, but we've kind of talked around, you know, the mill building there, because we said, well, it's going to go through this 40R process. And so we've really focused our energy and our momentum on this, on everything else. Right.
Okay.
And so, so now we're like talking about, you know, creating like now at the last second,
well, it's not the last second. I have mentioned it before. What happens if that doesn't go through? I have mentioned that when we're walking and talking and doing it. And so if you guys are happy with that, I'm just bringing it up because, you know, and if you guys want to just go ahead and do it, then that's
well, what's his recourse? Like, what's the recourse, right? So let's say, you know, the 40R conversation continues, you know, we move this forward as it is. the 40R process continues, and for whatever reason, it doesn't result in an agreement to do a 40R on that site. So then, I mean, just talk it through with me. So then he's got a 3-story, 38-foot height limit on that site. However, from Peter's reading, it's measured based on the
Average.
the average of the 4 posts of the structure at the grade level, right? So you'd have like a high one and you'd have 3 low ones, because it's like so. I mean, I guess forget the details, but like, what's his recourse? So he's like, okay, I haven't done a 40R. So there's a constraints. Like, is there an ability to appeal? Is there an ability to get like, let me go back to the document. Like, what are the special permit options?
Isn't it as simple as saying 38 feet from the main street level and 3 stories, 4 stories by special permit?
Yeah, the way it is now.
Well,
Something like that, just so
any 4 stories is special permit.
Yes, exactly.
So he goes for a special permit.
He has to show how it works, but he's not limited to. So maybe you can build a really nice building that's 4 stories and it fits and it works. And I know
anyone else who
just
comes to
talking about
present 4 stories in 38 feet, we get to see it, because
Yeah.
it seems like it could really be crammed in there. But to me, it seems like the height of these buildings and limiting the overall height on Main Street, not talking about the back, on Main Street, has been a real concern and issue of the residents of Ashland. And I think we need to respect that.
Well, I agree, limiting the 38 feet from Main Street, but I'm just saying that leaves a lot higher in the back. So eliminating a 4th floor for everybody, I think.
Right, so 4th floor by special permit.
It's special like it is now, because if they can come in and show how it works, and it's better than having only 3 floors, and the building's going to look better and it's going to fit in, at least there's an option for them. I mean, and the planning board will have to approve it. So if they don't like it, they don't approve it, right? Whoever is the planning board at the time can look at it and say, you know what, this looks great, rather than maybe the 3 stories didn't look so great.
So to clarify, what we're saying is adding one more, like number 9 or something, that just very very simply states that 3 stories could be raised to 4 stories by special permit. And that's we're kind of leaving it at that. We're not touching height, because height's the same. So I think that's a very simple way to address this issue.
And as long as height is meant from Main Street, even that average, like, that's not what we meant,
I think
we meant from Main Street is what we meant.
I think we can clearly state that the height, the measurement of height within the AD district, in the ADD A, B, and C, shall be measured from street level, front plane,
Right.
the street plane,
Whatever it is.
moving vertically north.
Right, that was always our intention.
I agree, because when I measured town hall, it was 50 feet from the street level. All the other buildings I measured were from the street level. And so therefore, I believe that is probably the best compromise moving forward.
And then would you have to put in a language of special permit for 4 floors?
I think for anything over 4 stories, for not over, but any 4-story building, right, which is going to be below 38 feet, measured from grade plane, is a special permit. And so in the case, if you want it for let's say any building, right, they would have to require a special permit for that. But there's no special permit.
Again, I know it's just one building, but that's, if things go a certain way, you're kind of telling one guy you can't do anything. You can't do something that maybe would be good.
It's easier to have this conversation here.
That wasn't our
And
intention.
it has to be approved, and they have to come and show how it works before they can do anything, because otherwise they can say, nope, that doesn't enhance anything. That doesn't work. It's too crammed in. That's too this, that. it'll all be reviewed, but at least it's not completely eliminated in a certain circumstance where it might be better. That's all.
I think I can, if the board would want to vote to make those adjustments, I'm happy to work with Chris, and which I think are fairly minor adjustments, Dale. I think, but we're not giving the ability for anybody to put a building greater than 38 feet measured from street plane. And that's just not going to be added within this bylaw. And so you're going to keep the hard line at 38 feet regarding the measurement of height from Main Street moving north vertically. And if that's what and I think that's what I am hearing from the board.
There anyone else have comments on that? Or any other parts of this?
I mean, I'd be willing to adjust it the way has been discussed. That addition of that paragraph, I'd be okay with that.
That and the change of the language on the 12 feet.
Yeah.
Correct. It's a correction.
Yep.
Anybody else on the board?
Okay, good.
All right, well, I'm going to open it up for public comment then. And let me see, Mark. I see you waving.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to just say, you guys, this is way overthinking this. You came down to basic what it said in the codes now. But street level is another way of saying it is base foundation up, not just street level. You could go someplace else and be like in the middle of a neighborhood and put a building up, but you still need that certain height. And I'm understanding all and agreeing at the times, but by using the mixed use and not having commercial, Dale, that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would probably agree that if you did it that way, then how Peter ended up saying, the 38 and special permit for fourth, anything above 38, even if it's not a complete fourth floor, it can still be a mix in the ADD VOC. Yes or no?
Well, you can't go above 38, you're saying.
And the ADD Ashland Downtown C, B, and C would fit better if it was in those words. Yes or no?
I'm not understanding your question.
Okay,
I'm
now
not following you, Mark.
you're not following me? Okay, it's a downtown district.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the code saying 38 with a special permit for a building. It doesn't say what the shape is or anything of it. It's a building. Yes or no? It could be a long building. It could be a building with a flat roof. It could be a pitched roof.
There'd be multiple. There's multiple situations that we're talking about, Mark.
And flat roofs would need special permit.
Okay, and now through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Koshel. How did you, as you were quickly going through it, as the discussion was going on, how did you actually see a special permit above 38 feet in your ways of working the downtown design and MHPC's way of doing things? How did it look out in your way of doing things?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
You're not following me? Because you're different. You have a different, you can go by state codes too, right?
You're asking how we're determining the definition of height. We're relying on the town's definition of height.
And then you go back and just be certain, but you can put in different your language to fit in with the town language, right?
Well, Mark, it's the town bylaws that, every town has its own bylaws that will determine the measurements of height, ratio, volume. I myself have worked in a couple of towns that measure height different ways, and so the only way that we, the board, can measure height is through what is in the bylaws. I can say.
I agree with that, and I know that.
There's no state regulations on
No,
what the
okay, no state
code
regulations.
is. Nope, this is the state of Massachusetts is a local, there's no height, per se, the zoning code, the definition would reflect it. The definition of height is reflected in the zoning code.
Okay, which is, it may not be as per name, but the form base might be a little in that.
Form based code. I think we're going down
I won't go there.
deeper conversation, Mark.
I won't.
So
I
think
won't.
we
I
should
won't.
back it up a little
I'll
bit.
take that back.
Okay.
I'll take that back. So
That's okay.
through the chairman to Trish with the architectural, I'm agreeing in a sense with her about the as you said there, and her and Trisha there saying about it may look like in the front street level, but in the back it could look different. I want to know in that sense, either you, Mr. Chair, or Trisha, can you explain what the difference would be from front, how it looks like once in the front, that could be different in the back? What does
All I
that?
was saying is that in the front is higher, so that would be 38 feet. The street is higher. In the back, it might be different because it's lower. And so it might look taller from the back because the grade is lower. I wasn't talking about aesthetics, just height.
Okay, it's just height.
Just
Thank
height.
you. And to get this worded in the sense that it'd be easier for townspeople to understand the questions they would do for you, Dale, Mr. Chairman, excuse me. They may not understand as much as the board, and I'm not blowing my own horn, but a little bit like I do. They just see as in front of them, sight in front of them, and then asks the question, what if? So if the people could all understand that, and then come back and ask you, they can understand the answers you give back to them. Wouldn't that be correct?
Yeah, well, that's why we're having a public hearing right now.
Yes. So as I'm being calm, I'm being good about this with everything. It's a good conversation, but it seems like the end result should be anything over 38 feet, special permit to make another floor, and to work it into and keep it in the books. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I'll leave it at that. I see Catherine has her hand up.
Hi, so I guess I somewhat had like Mark's question. I listened to Chris's presentation. I saw those pictures and I got the idea that those were replacing on the form-based code, but I didn't hear anything specifically mentioned. Like, are we keeping form-based code and that's a replacement? Are we ditching form-based code? And I imagine if I read the whole thing, it's in there, but yeah.
I can take this.
I can
Yeah.
answer. Go ahead.
No, Chris, you can take it, but no, we're not ditching form-based code. We're cleaning up form-based code, right? And what we're doing, I believe, is we are taking back, those items that we have in our bylaw, right, are straight from Google, right? They're from the American Planning Association, Google examples of form-based codes, right? And the question, I think, for all of us and for the townspeople is to say, do those, I would say, bland buildings, right, fit what the town wants to see, right? And so we are, and a couple of them are fairly not industrial looking, but almost very civic engaged, And so I think the question is that let's update the examples of the buildings within our bylaw, something that has been built and what the people of the town actually like, right? And so I think working with MAPC, we're putting new diagrams in, right? We're putting a new suit on this bylaw, quote unquote, I would say. And that's what we're doing. We're not ditching form-based code by any stretch of the imagination. What we're trying to do is upgrade it.
Okay, and then I guess along with that, because maybe we've seen maybe it didn't get implemented quite what we wanted, and maybe Chris has more experience of that. And I'm wondering if we think we got some of those corrections as well, not just the diagrams.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of the point of this was, you've got some projects going in, you have some things you really like, some things maybe you didn't like so much. So let's the diagrams aren't there just for the sake of having diagrams. The diagrams are there to actually get the town, the desires of the town, of what the town wants. And that's why I think what Pete had noted, how he described it, this is essentially 2.0 of a form-based code, because it's more tailored to what you really want in the downtown.
And
Cool.
really quick, can I just say something about the diagrams? If you're looking at the diagrams, the lower left diagram, doesn't that look like 4 floors? Just notice that. People are looking at these to go off just to point. I know we already hashed out the 4-floor thing, but one of the diagrams actually looks like it has 4 floors.
Yeah, it looks like 3.5, I would probably call it. And now it looks like we're all set because we're going to make that change. So now
I just wanted to point.
Yeah, and I think, like Dale's pointing out, we found that puts us up a little bit because people maybe misinterpreted, right? I think people probably wanted to meet the intent and it got confusing. So I bet this is going to take more than 2.0 to get it right, unfortunately, but hopefully this is going to work. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Nobody? See anyone, Emma? I don't see anyone.
No, I do not.
Okay. And last comments from the board? Already hashed it out. So I guess we'll close the public hearing. If someone wants to make a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second that.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Joe Ruberton, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. That passes 5-0-0. And now, obviously, I'm going to need some help with the changes. Entertaining a motion to take it away, Pete or Trish.
So I take the easiest one first, right? And I think the board likes to make a motion to change the word change the word in section, 8.5.6, item 4, which would be rear yard. We are going to change the word more with the word less. So the first sentence will read rear yards, period, where a property abuts a residential district. The rear yard must be a minimum of 30 feet, which may be reduced to no less than 12-foot rear yard through a special permit.
Okay, so yeah, I'll entertain a motion to accept the change. How are we doing this? Should we approve it with all of the, or can we do it one at a time?
Let's do one at a time.
Amend it to section 8.5.6.
Item 4.
Item 4.
We're
change it from no more than
to no less
than a 12-foot rear yard. You have a motion?
Motion moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Joe Ruberton, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. It passes 5-0-0. And now we'll entertain a motion to, Pete,
So I think we are going to add in section 8.5.6 lot dimensions and standards. We are going to add number 9, which is going to be the height. And we are going to say all the heights of all buildings shall be measured from the street plane of Main Street vertically north to the highest point.
Oh. Wait a minute, if we're measuring them from Main Street and it's in a different, is this referring to all the district, sub-districts? Because if they're not, if one goes downhill and they
Okay.
survey it from Main Street, I think
Yeah,
street
the
level,
Primary street or,
street
The
level,
okay, let's say the primary street level, the primary street.
I'd say the address street level at the address or something, because, you know, it goes up and down, it can make a difference of a few feet.
The address street or the fronting street.
Yeah,
Okay, so the height will be measured from the fronting street vertically north to the highest point of the roof, which shall be no greater than 38 feet.
You want me to make a motion for that? I kind of chatted that down.
yeah, okay. Thank you, Joe.
1 second. I make a motion to amend the amendments to the downtown zoning bylaws in section 8.5.6, add number 9, which would read that the height of all buildings shall be measured from the street plane of the fronting street event vertically north to the highest point, with the height to be no greater than 38 feet.
Anybody want to second it?
You gotta motion it. Or,
But you just made the motion, right?
you're right, sorry.
So that's the motion. I can second it, right?
Nobody wants to second it. Maybe they don't want to second.
I'll second it. You made the
Sorry, I
motion.
was
I'll
on mute.
second
Okay.
it. Okay. All in favor?
Patricia Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Going good day.
Joe Ruberton, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye, passes 5-0-0. Next will be the 4th story permit special.
Yes, we'll add a special. So also in
Paragraph 10.
Yep, we'll add up item 10. Upon applicate, I'm trying to think of the correct language.
Any
I'm sorry.
application with a building height, or no, it's
I would say
Any building more
Special
than
permit.
4-story building has to be approved with special permit.
so through a special permit by the planning board in accordance with section 9.3 to allow for a 4-story to be, for a 4-story building. And then we can say no building again shall be greater than 38 feet from the fronting street plane.
I don't have that. So if you want me to frame this up, you got to give it to me one more time. So
Okay, I'm gonna say through a special permit by the planning board in accordance with section 9.3, an applicant shall apply for the addition of a 4-story to a proposed structure.
okay, 1 second.
And because we already talked about height in the first and the
Yeah.
one above, I don't think we have to reiterate ourselves.
Okay, so I make a motion to amend the draft amendment to the downtown zoning bylaws, section 8.5.6, to add item number 10 through a special permit by the planning board in conjunction with section 9.3. An applicant can apply for an addition of a 4th-story to the core structure.
Second that.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Aye.
Joe Ruberton, aye.
Joe Buchanan, I passes 5-0-0. Are there any more?
That's it, right?
So then we would approve the whole thing with the amendments that do we have to do that or, yeah, because we only approved the changes.
Correct.
Yep.
You have to take another motion to
Okay.
approve and to put forth this to the town meeting warrant as amended.
I would entertain a motion to put forward this proposal to the town warrant with the amendments that we approved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Blanket eye.
Joe Ruberton, aye.
Joe Buchanan, I passes 5-0-0. Okay. Now we have approval of review of 12 Pond building color first floor windows in accordance with condition 29 of the 12 Pond Street special permit decision dated December 23rd, 2019. Do we have images or? someone
Yes, we
put
do.
up?
Good evening, everyone. May I show my screen?
So before we get into this, let me just explain that Peter and I and Deepa had decided not wanting to actually obviously make a quorum, but not to have more than one person see what we were seeing. Met at 12 Pond Street, when was it, Wednesday? And really to look at, to remind ourselves where the project was at this time, since we really haven't seen it in quite a long time, and to have more than one eye on it. So so we met there with the intention of kind of looking at where things were, you know, in the process. And while we were there, while Deepa and I were there waiting for Peter, Mr. Zamuto came out, probably wondered why we were hanging out in his parking lot. And so we were able to discuss a little bit in a little more depth where the colors were right now, what the, talking about the doors a little bit, we were able to see the doors, the glass doors, the ones that were installed. They're not all installed, but the ones that were installed, we were able to see them from the inside, see how they operate. So, and have kind of just a general discussion without any bent toward decision-making of ideas about colors, ideas about the doors, in order to bring that, I guess, a little bit more depth to the committee. Is there anything you want to add to that, Deepa?
I think you nailed it. So it is just more to get a feel of where things were and what we could come back to the board and share in real time.
So what we recommended, what we came off with at that time in our discussion was that we weren't, it didn't sound like a color proposal maybe hadn't really been submitted as far as looking at options or really what we had kind of asked for. And so that maybe there might be like one rendition of color here that we were asking for, but really the goal of the meeting, the goal of tonight is really maybe to focus on the doors and have some discussion of the color, but maybe that we're not confirming a color tonight, because obviously we need to see, as we've talked about before, samples of everything. So.
Okay. So let's talk about the windows first. Did everybody get a chance to see the drawings that they see? We have those? The new ones they sent over with the windows?
We have the specification sheets that we can put up here right now.
Not, didn't they send over some new renderings that had?
Yes. Jim,
I'm gonna put them up. I got them up. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
I can't share. Can somebody enable, please? Okay, thanks. Okay. So this is the document in question, correct?
I believe we have sent over.
Yeah, I have a few of these open. All right, hold on one second. Let me make sure I have the right ones opened.
The latest one
So,
shows,
so Jim, what did you say? What's the date?
the latest one was showing the first floor having gray.
Right. So there's the document that I have is 12 Pond Street, Ashland, exterior storefront submission, April 22, planning board meeting. Is that the document, Jim?
We just sent stuff over today. The colored drawings.
Okay. I believe
Okay.
these are the color drawings that we were provided. Does that share my screen again?
Those aren't the correct ones.
I'm not showing anything right now. These are not the correct ones. Is that
Yeah.
what you
No,
said?
they're not.
Jim,
The
can
latest
you
one
pull
shows-
those up?
Can I share my screen?
So Emma, did we not get the right ones here?
No,
Peter sent an additional email today with updated renderings, which I think are the ones that Charlie is referencing. So Jim, you can share your screen if you'd like to share the renderings.
So these are the latest ones showing the
Got it. 515.
first floor being a gray brick color.
So what happened to the brick?
The brick, after, while I was at the site the other day, meeting with Pete and Trish and Deepa, we were just talking about getting some colors together. And we discussed gray brick instead of red brick would look more modern with the black doors. So we asked Jim to put gray brick on the plan and remove the red brick. So we actually have to get samples together for that. And we wouldn't have been able to get them today. So those I'm gonna have to present later on.
So I think, as
Oh,
Tricia said, I thought we were going to focus on the doors for this piece of it at this point.
Yeah.
What
Well,
I
he's
had
he's showing what it's
suggested,
gonna look like with the gray bricks.
yeah,
That
what I
might-
had suggested when we were looking at this thing and Peter had the original drawings that were submitted on time with the colors. What we were talking about was that, and after viewing the doors inside and out and their operation, and we went up to them, we looked at the powder coating on them, was that these doors are obviously a very modern feature, right? They're not traditional. They don't fit into a traditional building. And what we were finding was that the colors as presented, which is 3 different colors of siding plus red brick, which is extremely traditional in nature, was just kind of too much, right? And kind of thinking about these doors being modern and how the building starts to take on one voice. Like, is it kind of a modern building, you know? So what I suggested was that maybe changing the color of the brick. And I thought later that brick could even become stone, possibly just something else besides the red rustic brick that we had as as a sample. I think would help the doors look better in their environment versus having these modern doors and this very rustic brick, which just wasn't, I don't think helping matters. So I thought we could just focus on the doors in this and then explore the possibilities of the colors. So that's why I had asked, can we just see this without the red? Can we see these colors a little bit more toned down so that we can focus on the doors and not these colors right now?
Just solely intentional for kind of more color studies that even the gray
That's
brick
right.
was mentioned as not as just the go-to, but maybe options for color studies that'll help clear the doors in the first place.
So comments on the doors. We have other angles too, like straight on and
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know how the white spaces, I thought the doors were, could be customized and we were going to cover that space, right? Because in the first rendering, the garage doors were wider and was more window space, but now there's more wall space. I thought we discussed that was going to change, right? Like we were going to change that, or am I wrong?
We had definitely discussed the width of.
Yeah.
of,
I thought
you
the
know,
ideas, yeah, and I think the feedback we got was the doors can be customized and they can be extended. And they had to move
Well,
some.
The other issue that was raised when we discussed this last issue was that there's a structural steel beam in place. That was an issue as well, correct, to the board?
yes.
Yes, it's in place.
So I think what we need to do is focus on what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Because we can go on and on about what could maybe be a little better or a little different, and that's more of a opinion. So we need to focus on the doors
Mhm.
and consider, I mean, to me, and being in, being able to open them and have it open to the sidewalk and all that, I think is a good asset.
So these doors are intention, especially with COVID going on. These doors will allow to open and let a lot of fresh air and movement in the building. So people will be able to sit on the sidewalk and walk in and out of the doors, and it'll make the open space actually be part of the indoor space, and then space be part of the open space. Because right now we're working with and they're going to do a upscale taqueria and they want to be able to patio outside and people sitting outside and inside and moving.
So does anyone have comments or objections to the door? Other than the other windows I know are a little wider, but we kind of have to look at this as what they are, because I believe he was saying earlier that they come in standard sizes, and in order to fit them in, it makes the windows a little bit smaller. But do we have to look at that and say, is that a deal breaker, or is that it can work?
Yeah, I think the reason we talked about it before was the main reason we were so happy with the garage doors was more light was going to come. But if the doors became narrower, then there's more wall space, and so that the light that we initially thought was going to be coming in is now not that much, right? So that's why I think we bought that up. But so if the doors have to be smaller, it has to be smaller, because then they come on standard sizes. So I'm okay with the other people, other committee members. Okay.
I see a little bit of more wall space, but I can't see I think the positive aspects of the doors are way outweigh any extra wall space.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but in the first rendering, it was more doors, like more windows than wall space, right? So that's why we were asking that question.
Anything else?
I am. Sorry, go ahead. I can go on.
Go ahead.
On slide 5, could you go to slide 5 for just a second, Jim? Yeah. So in the very center part of the building, we've got, it looks like a single door and not a double door there. Any reason for that, or any reason not to make that more symmetrical in nature, just as the center of the building?
Yeah, the reason for that is that these are automatic, like electronic release doors, and it's really hard to make them have both. Two doors.
And that's for the residents, correct? That's a residential entryway, is it correct?
Yeah,
or is that?
That's correct.
I'm sorry, Jim.
That is the residential entry.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I think probably you'd have to kind of be right in front of it again to see, really notice that. But it is a point when you're looking right straight at it. But I think, again, you have to do what you
No,
need.
it's fine. I just was asking. There's a purpose, there's a reason behind. That's fine. But that'll be glass, correct? All of those
It's
three,
all glass.
great. It's all glass. It's just there's a single door there. Got it.
That's
Okay.
right.
So is everybody okay with the windows?
Mhm.
We need to take a vote on this, I guess, because it's in the conditions.
Mhm.
To entertain a motion to approve the doors on the 12 Pond Street project. I mean, the
So moved.
window doors.
Motion move.
Second,
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Ruberton, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye, passes 5-0-0. Now the next, we're gonna talk about colors now, or are we gonna, everybody knows where I'm at on the colors. I think that the builder should present colors that they want, and we should say if it's acceptable or not. And
Right.
now it seems like we're determining every color of everything, but we can have a discussion about that and see where we want to move on that.
Well, I think that we're in agreement on that, Dale, and then that's what I talked to Mr. Zamuto about on site. That really is, it's not our job to be the architect for the project. So just trying to give some notion that I think before with this building really had 4 colors without really a theme. Like it's kind of the browns. Well, is it kind of a rustic country building? Is it a modern building? What is the idea behind this? And so to present some options that make it look like there's one thought behind it.
Exactly.
So,
And
so in
so
doing that,
you guys talked and he's agreeable to present that, right?
Well, it's mostly about trying to get to something more quickly. So and I think like Deepa said, it wasn't about presenting one option each time, but maybe presenting several options each time about different things that you thought about in the design process. And I think included in that, so like I said, driving around, I thought, well, maybe the bottom is stone that has some gray in it and that it has some of this light cream color in it. Those are all just design things to play with, but obviously we shouldn't be the ones playing with them. I also think that we've talked about it before, that there's not a lot of detail in some areas here, and those things should continue to be developed as this is presented to us.
So then on the facade, I guess what you're saying, because you've discussed this, you guys talked to Charlie about it, and he's putting that together, I guess, because this is already showing different. So probably the best thing would be to Jim, are you going to present options?
If the board is yeah.
Because right now you just made it gray so we could focus on the windows, but that's not really what the finish that you are planning on putting on there. I mean, is this what we're looking at right now? Is that the colors you're proposing, or are you working on something different?
That is the color that we're proposing, yes. In communicating with Charlie, that's the color that we want.
And with just those bricks?
With the gray color bricks.
So you'd like us to consider this option right here?
Charlie?
So you see where I'm at? They're presenting this, so we kind of need to look at this and say, well, if that's what they're presenting, I thought that there was a discussion. Someone said something earlier about they were thinking about putting stone and maybe doing that, or.
Let me say this again. Okay, I'm the one, after this meeting, when I was driving around on my own, thinking about this building, I had suggested maybe we can try a different color brick, because we've always just seen this one red rustic brick. We've never talked about it, probably because we just never got that far in talking about things.
Okay.
But as we discuss the colors, which are up for discussion because it proceeded without approval. So the colors are up for discussion. We approved the roof. Now we have approved the windows, right? That the developer and the architect look at some options about how to save what they can save that's there, right? They might have to paint some of the building. They might be able to save some of the colors. They haven't put the brick on yet, so that's very flexible. What can you do with what you have to try to come up for some good options? This is one option. Is it a final option? I don't know. I would think that several options could be explored in this building and presented. But maybe there's 3 options.
But what I think Jim said is this is the option they're presenting.
Well, that's great, but we're asking for 3.
Trish,
So
excuse me. Are we okay with the gray on the second floor now? Do you want?
No, this is not what we're saying. We're saying we're not approving any colors. We're saying, can you give it some thought, not just what Deepa and I threw out there when we were on site.
Okay.
Give it some thought. Maybe gray isn't the right color. Maybe it's better to save the brown that's on the back. Maybe that's the right move, right? Give it some thought and come back with some options.
Okay, that's fine.
So maybe the brick's gray, maybe it's not.
I'll go this week.
I believe, Mr. Zamoto, I believe what she's saying is that she would like to have a few options that you would like to do, or that how you want to see it, and maybe 3 variations or 4, whatever you come up with. If you got more ideas, you can mix and match.
Yeah, that's
bring
fine.
those so they can actually compare A, B, C and say, you know what, I just looked at it and B looks really good.
Yeah, I was under the impression that with our meeting the other day that the gray, we all agreed that getting rid of the darker brown and using the gray was the right thing to do, and that we were going to pick a stone for the bottom floor. That's what I was under the impression of.
Personally, I think that the gray is pretty viable.
I do too.
But I'm only one person of 5, so maybe there's a better option. I don't know.
And Charlie, the way I would look at it as well, like I personally like this, what I'm seeing in front of the screen. Definitely it's way, way better than what it was. I think that small kind of just that first color study of switching to gray has made a lot of difference. I think there's a lot of uniformity from the design point of view. It feels like somebody has really thought through it. But then from your point of view, I would think that you have 2 other colors going on 3 sides of the building, right?
Yeah.
So do you think if you had an option where Jim presented an option where, hey, let's keep the 2 colors that's going on in the back and see what can we do to switch things up front, and maybe that is one option. So now you are kind of easily coming up, and that's going to minimize the amount of work that you have to do as well. Like instead of like just kind of following one particular direction, now you have the option to save the building and quickly move forward now. So I think it's just color studies that you have to do, and I think you're almost there.
Okay, I think for the thing I'm gonna pick first, I'll get some samples of some stone, and then we'll mock up some paint colors, and then I'll present them to the board again.
Does that help, Charlie? I think I hope it helps. Its idea is to help you finish this building quickly and really have the Takira space that we all can start enjoying very soon.
Yep, as long as we can keep moving with the construction part, that's fine. The paint colors are the easy, I can change paint colors easy.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to, or I guess you'll arrange it for them to come back when they're ready and present?
Yeah, no, I'll work with Charlie. So I think the number one thing is, obviously we approved the doors, the windows, whatever we want to call them. So I think, Charlie could proceed with the construction out there.
Yeah.
And get moving, obviously. And I'll work with Charlie, in getting some samples, getting some colors. If Charlie and Jim can present, 3 color options and bring in samples to town hall, I'll obviously email the board out as soon as possible, and have everyone come in to the town hall and if however people want to, meet out in the field on a weekday, I'm also happy to set up something out in the field on a weekday with everybody. And we can just post a meeting and do a little bit of a field trip, like what we did. So I think there's a couple options, but yeah, I'm happy to, see this, Charlie move forward, and I'm happy to work with Charlie to kind of take the next step.
And I would just say to Jim, if he's picking some stone, if you can have an accurate drawing with the stone on, and then an accurate drawing with the brick, gray brick. I know it's a lot of work, but it's gonna save having to come back 3 more meetings. If you can just do it all at once and have, these are our options. This is what it'll look like with brick and these colors. This is what it'll look like with stone and these colors, and have it pretty close, pretty accurate to what it is. If you can bring all that back to the next meeting, it could probably be done, finished.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, rather than just bringing one option and this is what we want to do, and then, well, I don't know, what about maybe brick would be better if you had several options, and then it can all be considered at once, and then it can be done.
And I think
Jim, my small quick, this one is that entry where you have the residential entry. I think that awning is very close to what's on the roof. So when you're doing your color studies, just make sure that it's kind of close enough. Otherwise, that's going to stand out the next time you change that brick color. That's going to stand out, because in reality, the roof color and that entry color, metal color, is very close. So you want to be careful about how you play with colors when you're doing this.
Yeah, and I would also say that in looking at the first floor, when you choose casings and stuff around windows, they're often related to the size of the opening. So right now, the casings around the big windows at the bottom are about the same as the windows on the second floor, so there's also looking at the detail as you go through too. I think we've talked about before how that kind of the cream area around the front door just seems like a big flat painted surface. And is there any detail on there? Is there additional trim? Is there any dimension to it? Or is it just flat paint, So I think as part of this, you need to be looking at the detail level too, beyond where it is right now. It seems still a little, diagrammatic.
Getting all that, Jim? Okay. We're just trying to speed things up, because every time you have to come back, that's another 2 weeks or whatever. So, it'd be nice if you can just finish this up and start enjoying it. Any other comments on the board?
So we'll come back next time with 3 different options.
Okay, so we'll just get in touch with Pete and he'll put it on the agenda when you guys are ready. And meanwhile, if there's samples, you guys will let everybody know. Come down and look at them in person and touch them and do whatever. So, all right.
All right.
Was
Thank you.
that the 2 issues we had? That was it, pretty much. We're down to colors now in the facade. Okay. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you,
Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have minutes. Do we have them? Everybody, I guess we can just, everybody got the email.
Are we doing the 25th one first?
25th.
Yeah, I think I just have one correction on the building height. I think we meant to say 48 feet, not 45, right? That's what's on the zoning that we got.
Is it referring to current zoning or new zoning?
No, this is what we discussed, and that's what's gone into that zoning, right? Or am I getting it wrong the other way? Does current zoning draft has 48 in it?
And that's for that architectural structure.
Yeah, that's the 48, right? That section
Correct.
7. Yeah, it should be 48, not 45. That's the only correction I had.
Okay.
on the March 25th minutes. You guys hear me?
Mhm.
There's no attendance in terms of whose attendance. Isn't that typical in the intro there?
Who was there at the
In terms
meeting?
of members, yeah. And that's normal. Do we normally do that? No. I mean,
No,
you
we
could look
always-
at the voting. I mean, it tells you, but
well,
I thought there's usually a little thing that says in attendance. No,
Check.
No, you're right, Joe. We'll add the attendance list. That's not
Not a big deal.
That's an
It-
easy fix.
Yeah, and it's not on the April one too, the next one.
Okay.
sorry, I know it's picky on, but
In 10 years from now, when whoever is here will be asking who is in attendance. So
You know,
it's
Right.
a good thing, you know,
there might,
from somebody that's at the research minutes from the 1950s. It's always good to know. So,
somebody with too much time on their hands would be
hey, you know,
complaining.
when you dig deep, you never know what you're gonna find.
But Pete, maybe they'll be wearing Google glasses by then. It'll be recording everything you do every day anyway. So you might not need
It
this.
could be, you know.
yeah, you'll just be able to like play a tape back and like magically see what happened, you know?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Like the Matrix.
Like,
That was a good. You know what? I haven't thought about that movie in a long time. You know? Keanu Reeves in The Matrix.
Can we just kind of review like what, so this is the meeting after we had our tour, and now we're kind of rediscussing what we saw on the tour. Because obviously a lot of these things aren't, like, we didn't agree on a maximum height of 4 stories or 45 feet, right? That's not what we decided. Is that what we were discussing at the time? Or were we just discussing that and we ended up obviously later somewhere else, right?
That was a very big discussion meeting, I would say, because
Okay.
we discussed a lot. And then
It's weird to go back and like, I don't remember.
No. After that whole tour, we discussed a lot. Step back, height, X,
That's
Y,
where we
and Z.
decided the 48. That's what
And then I think after that discussion is when we went back and I started measuring buildings, town hall, and 128
Okay.
Main Street, and
Well,
21 Main Street to get a better idea
Well-
of how tall the buildings were, how.
well, so to that point in the document section on row 86.
Yep.
I don't see the document reference that we're looking at that is basically laid up from rows 28 through 49. Right. So I think so. The members reviewed a downtown zoning dimensional graphic prepared by Emma Snelling that compared and contrasted based on these properties and the board's discussion. The specifications noted below were recommended for the proposed bylaw for these zones. So I think there's this downtown dimensional graphic that should be a document reference. And then I think, wasn't there a document that laid out these pieces that you've got here in 28 through 49?
Yeah, I remember I had a whole package of stuff that I handed
Yeah.
out at that meeting.
I
we
definitely
can
think
add those in. There was
should
many
add that.
maps I colored, not colored, I printed out and I highlighted, I colored, and I kind of made this handouts for all of us. I remember we had those big clipboards and we walked around town.
Because it says, based on these properties and the board's discussion, the specifications noted below were recommended for the proposed bylaw. I guess, I mean, what's here is not what we ultimately, some of it's what we did, but some of it's different, right?
Yeah, and that's the question I have, because then if you look at the April 8th, it doesn't say, instead of maximum 44 stories and 45 feet, we decided on a maximum of 3 stories and 38 feet, and we put the pinnacle height at 48, not 45. It doesn't, there's no connection between these things, which we apparently agreed on, and what's actually in the bylaw. Like, there's no,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
think-
That kind of concerns
Yeah.
me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It
that's
needs to be made clear that we discussed the below recommendations, but that the committee,
No
in no
final-
way concluded on
No
what
final
is presented.
conclusion was made.
No final conclusion was made. I think it should be made clear. Yeah.
You know, we were gonna look at building height, and then if we did look at the building heights, which I remember we did, maybe
Mhm.
that was
That's why I
on,
notes, that's what I have in my notes, that we did just land on the 48, so for the 325th meeting.
yeah, so I can see, and when I look at when I look at the April 8th, there's a line that says, in addition, the provision that allowed for a 4-story building was removed. So I think maybe, I mean, it's a real little redoing of these notes, but it's almost like taking this section from, from the earlier one and putting it in the new one, and discussing it again after looking at the building heights prevented by Peter. We landed on these, we made these changes so that there's kind of that we can see our progress.
I don't think we should vote these tonight. I think these should get retooled before we do it, right?
We'll edit these up and we'll come back with those.
I think there has to be a clear path in our thinking to how we got to where we are today.
I agree.
And at the end of the day, this is the record of these meetings for
Mhm.
posterity. And yes, Peter, you're right. Probably it's very infrequently overlooked at, but I think it's part of the deal, right?
It's a part of the deal, as we get to our next item in the administrative matters, right? I'm going to talk about the Village of the Americas, and my next project, the next 2 weeks, is going to be going through planning board minutes and town hall and town meeting minutes and doing research on that entire project. And so these will become important, may or may not become important. It just depends on.
Peter, I'm going to start praying for both you and Emma now, and I'll continue that prayer as long as you continue that project. There's a lot of my comment is purely that project goes back so far.
It's like very far, yeah.
Like
no,
way far. This guy that was like Preston's early days, and
It
Preston was here for 15 years.
It's 2002.
Yeah, so you got 20 years of minutes.
Yeah.
So
I was a sophomore in high school, What did I know?
So
Godspeed.
we're gonna wait on the minutes then?
Yeah.
Let's wait on the minutes. Yeah.
Okay. The next ones, try another set.
Well, I think the second set is going to relate to the first set.
Yeah.
Because I have them both open, and that's why I'm saying I'm looking for that really consistent format that we can follow our decision making.
Okay. And then briefly run through the second one just to make sure there's anything that needs to be kind of fixed on that they can do at the same time. Any major referencing or anything, but I'm sure.
I think for April, there's probably more documents than are listed there. I think you need an attendance stack at the top probably too, right?
Yeah. Okay, we'll wait. All right, so administrative matters and.
All right, so there's just 3 points I kind of want to, and I know it's late, but I think it's important that I kind of run through these things. I think on Monday or late last week, a resident made a public hearing request concerning the front porch bylaw, asking how many times in the past somebody had a conversation and an inquiry about a front porch. I'm in the window to respond to this, so I just kind of want to bring it, have a discussion with you, the planning board members, prior to I respond. I have this conversation, probably like once, twice a month. Working in other communities, I've had this conversation multiple times. I've actually worked with zoning boards and issued variances for these farmers porches and or front porches. But I don't know if any of the board members want to weigh in. How many times have you and or have you discussed this front porch that we are bringing now forth to town meeting? just so I can kind of, just for some background, I would say prior to my response. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak up. If they don't, I can move on to my other bullet points.
And is that, I guess we can talk about it, but there's no issue of close the meeting and now we can still discuss whatever we want, right?
Yeah, I think, I'm not, I think when it came into the planning board office, I believe everyone was CC'd on that email.
Because like I said, the reason why I even brought it up was because several people,
So-
and it
Oh.
had said that they were gonna do it and it was just such a big pain in the butt and
Mhm.
they didn't want to even go through the process. And that's what it got me thinking.
Dale, you would say you've had numerous conversations with numerous residents over the years.
How many,
but-
Dale? Can you give Peter an estimate?
I don't know if I can count that high.
Here, you can borrow my
Five.
hand here. Ready?
5 at least, no, probably 8 to 10 people. And actually that have discussed it, and actually 3, I would say, that want to do it. That they're planning on when this goes through, they want to add a porch on their house.
Okay.
And that's just me in my little world. So, I mean, I thought it was important enough to do, and then let people decide. Like we said, if they want to do it, they'll do it, and hopefully it'll help the neighborhood. And you see some of these houses that just look like the Monopoly houses. They're just square boxes,
Mhm.
and they can't do anything. And my neighbor across the street was complaining because, if I put a porch on my house, it's 3 feet wide, and I can't even put a chair and walk by. And it's such a hassle to try to get something. And he's got a huge yard. I mean, huge yard. It's not really gonna be pushing up to the street any. So that's what got me started.
Okay.
I think it's a good
It only
thing.
took me 3 years.
Peter, nobody has approached me regarding this or said that they want this to do a porch, but I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. It creates livability, it creates space, it creates neighborhoods and people and all the good things. So, I mean, I'm glad to support it, but nobody has approached me regarding it and said it's an issue and hey, do something.
Well, not exactly, Joe. I approached you saying I wanted to do it on my house. Remember the conversation? Once.
No
We
one
had
has
one.
approached me. No one has approached me either, but also I don't live in a neighborhood where that would be an issue. And I think if you're in a neighborhood where that would be an issue, you'd hear that conversation much more. I have, as a residential architect, I've come across again and again and again non-conforming houses that were just, their house was built and then the zoning was made, and that's why they're non-conforming, because the zoning changed, after they bought their house or after the house is built, say. So there's definitely things as we move forward into the future that need to be tweaked, because that zoning really wasn't intended for those neighborhoods. It's just kind of a blanket thing. So I think it's a really good move. I had a front porch on my last house and everyone in my family misses it. We don't have one in this house.
And I really appreciate all the board members, your input and all the work you put into this to make it happen. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Nobody's approached me, and I'm one of the 5 houses in my neighborhood who doesn't have a front porch. So maybe now I'm rethinking porch now, since this is going to make it easy.
All right, well, I think with that said, I've enough, and I'm going to respond back. It's because it is a public hearing. I mean, a public information request. So, okay. That was the first item. The second item is over the last couple of months, we've been talking about a housing production plan, the update to our housing production plan. Trish has actually been on a housing production committee.
Can everybody hear Peter clearly?
I'm having trouble hearing.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I thought I was losing.
Can you hear me now?
I could hear you fine earlier in the meeting and then it got really soft. I'm gonna go get headphones.
What are you talking about? Pete wasn't talking.
Now I'm talking into the microphone.
It sounds better.
My microphone was a little off, I think. So I think I was just gonna say, so over the last couple, I would say the last year, the town's been working on this housing production plan, right? The update to our 2006 housing production plan. We've been working with MAPC. The process has gone great. We've got our steering committee, which would include Tricia, representative from the planning board, representative from the board of selectmen, representative from two representatives from the Affordable Housing Trust. It's a great little group, right? And we've had 2 very successful public forums. We've had 5 committee meetings. We have an executive summary for the changes and the modifications that, regarding the goals that I'm going to be sending out tomorrow. And so with that said, that's all in preparation for a meeting, a joint meeting with the planning board and the select board next Wednesday. And I believe I've mentioned this joint meeting a couple months ago, and I feel like I may did not mention it in the last meeting. But the meeting with the Board of Selectmen is a very important meeting because this is to review and hopefully adopt the housing production plan, the update to the housing production plan. The executive summary will be going out, and then hopefully by next Monday or Tuesday, the full report will be issued. I know timing is a crunch. However, timing is a crunch because right now what was existing housing production plan has expired, right? In the same time, our Bella at Ashland, which is a 100-unit 40B up at the Cirrus, up off of Memorial Drive, has been going through the permitting process. So along with meeting with the planning board, Emma and I have been, working with the zoning board on this project for this development. The town of Ashland, so with this whole SHI 40B affordable unit count number that we have, it's a state mandate that all communities have 10%, right? I think everyone kind of gets that. Right now, the town is at 6.3. When the town approves, if the town and when the town, I believe, will approve Arbella, we're going to jump to about 8.3%. Regarding when you put in the state regulations, right? If the town, hopefully when the town of Ashland has an approved HPP plan, and the town increases its affordable unit count by 1% in one given calendar year, the town will have 2 years of safe harbor from any other 40Bs that can apply, right? So it's key that our timeline meets the approval timeline of the Arbella at 40B, the Arbella 40B process. So that's why we've been the HPP has been working, and we've been working, with Trish and Emma and other members, which include Brandy Kinsman and Steve Greenberg, to develop this housing production plan. And next Wednesday, we'll send out meeting invites to the Zoom link for the select board meeting. But it's a key step in the adoption process for the town to get a certified housing production plan, I would say. And so the executive summary is coming out tomorrow, and Emma and I have put together a memo that's going to go out with that executive summary. The executive summary is going to go up on the website, hopefully as soon as possible. And we're going to have myself and our consultant from MAPC, who's been working with the town for the last 6 months, will be on and presenting this plan to both the planning board and the select board next Wednesday night.
That's next Wednesday, the 19th of May.
The 19th, yeah.
What time?
The select board meets at 7. I don't have a definite time on their agenda, Joe, but I will try to get that to you as soon as possible, I would say.
Okay. And so we're sorry, I apologize. So this is going to be a joint meeting of the select board and the planning board. We're not going to have a joint meeting for the whole session of the select board meeting. So we're going to convene a joint session somewhere in the midst of their overall meeting.
Correct.
Okay. And so we do need to kind of nail the time down a little bit so everybody's on and we can drop in.
Exactly.
On the Zoom.
And this is going to be for a presentation. and then we can have a discussion, and then we can kind of move forward. And that's
Because
pretty
the
much
planning
it.
board needs to endorse the
By
housing
the state-
production
by
plan
the
by
state
state rules.
statute, the planning board and the select board have to adopt this plan, right? And then I have to send it to the state for certification. And this plan needs to meet certain criteria at the State Department of Housing and Development level. And then if this is a certified plan, and I have a call tomorrow at 10 o'clock with the state to review this process and to make sure that we're all on the same page, then we can and then as the 40B proceeds, hopefully the timing where, the town will receive certification, and then we'll be able to reap the full rewards per se of approving a 100-unit 40B.
I would just say, as far as the housing production plan goes, to read the executive summary, like when you get it, and it's not like a super technical thing. It's not like rocket science kind of reading. It's more it was really a process of kind of simplifying the old one, make it straightforward, kind of to the point, and really more timely about what is going on in our world today, and thus how to focus your efforts toward providing better housing in Ashland in particular. So if you're reading through this thing and say, well, duh, yeah, of course, that's kind of how it is, kind of to make it straightforward and simple directives to hopefully follow through on. I mean, there are some things in there that are different that I didn't, kind of policy techniques, that I wasn't familiar with. Yeah, so it'll be just good to hear your opinions and read through it and ask any questions that you have.
Is that document, have you guys already sent that to us, Peter? Did I miss that?
I have not sent it out.
No.
It
Okay.
just came to me, and I'm going to be sending it out. I was hoping to send it out after the meeting, but not going to lie, I'm going to probably go to bed and send it out tomorrow morning.
That's fine.
Because I don't think you guys are going to read it tonight. But no.
Yeah, I'm just saying in general, if you can send it in the next couple of days, then we can look at it.
No, I'm going to send it out tomorrow, and we'll go through it. Like what Trish said, the big things, 90% of the meat of the plan, the executive summary, what is being updated will probably come out Tuesday, is a lot of data, a lot of the data updates that, with population, percentiles, interesting stuff. But, the goals are all within the executive summary, I would say. So please watch out for that. And then, Emma, what am I missing?
Can I say my parking thing? Two
Yeah.
sentences, super quick.
Yeah.
So at the last concurrent meeting with the Design Review Committee a few months ago, they updated the board on some updates they were considering to the guidelines and possibly some bylaw recommendations they might be making. And one of those that they haven't really presented yet was a look at some of the parking recommendations and how to make parking lots more aesthetically pleasing and sustainable at the same time. And so they've been discussing that in terms of changing the guidelines. The conversation has blossomed. Some sustainability committee members has joined the conversation, and an interest in looking at the parking bylaws has grown. And again, to look at what can be a more sustainable and aesthetically pleasing and not too much parking kind of way. And so the Design Review Committee and some members of the Sustainability Committee are interested in possibly creating a working group to take a look at parking lot bylaws that currently exist and see if any recommendations can be made towards those goals. And so I just wanted to, one, let the planning board know that this is happening, and two, say if any members of the board are interested in possibly digging into these parking bylaws, please reach out and let me know. And I can fill you in on the conversations that have already happened. The group doesn't really exist yet. There's no like meeting times I can share with you, but we wanted to include the planning board. And so if you have an interest, let me know. And then if anyone is interested, we could put a vote, an appointment vote on the next meeting. But so just shoot me an email.
And the last thing I want to bring up is I mentioned Village of the Americas Phase 7. That project will be coming in front of the planning board, I would say in the next 1 to 2 months. And so one project that I have to do and one item I want to do to prepare the planning board is to research the Village of the Americas Phase 7. And I will be drafting a memo in the next 1 or 2 weeks to help everybody understand, including myself, the history of that project, what's going on. But the Bafford company who actually owns that property has received and has a purchase and sale for that property with the McDowell company. And they are planning to move forward with a proposed development on that site, I would say.
Peter,
Mhm.
I would suggest as you do that, I would definitely pull Preston in. He, if you recall, as he was departing, he retained almost like all the documents from his time.
Mhm.
So he might be a good use of documents to the extent you're missing something or looking for something, and also he might remember a lot of things.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna reach out to Preston. That's a great idea. There's a whole drawer full of,
I'm sure. Yeah.
Village of America stuff. I've actually organized all the original site plans and the site plan approval processes that have taken place through all the phases. So I've kind of wrapped my head around it a little bit. But there is some history here that, there's a zoning board of appeals decision. The zoning is put in place, there's a covenant that overrides the entire development. This is the last phase of the property of the master plan development, I would say. In 2008, there was a very large zoning decision case, Ashland zoning board case that was decided upon, and that's how you got the 10,000 square feet of temporary concrete block buildings that are on that land today, which allowed the Thacker company to build out the rest of the residential units. There was also a proposed zoning change for the covenant, which failed at town meeting, which I believe was in 2008 as well. So I will reach out to Preston, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg. So this is going to be a big case and probably it's going to be the biggest hearing that I've been part of, representing, working for the town of Ashland. So it's going to be a big one, and I just want to make sure everyone is prepared.
I have a quick announcement to make. My 5 years is up. It's been very rewarding, frustrating at times, but it was a great experience, and I met a lot of great people and Joe. And had to throw that in there, Joe.
That's good. Good job.
It went by pretty fast.
I
Anyway, it was great. It was a great experience.
want to say when I first started on planning board, which I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago now, just 2 years ago, that, obviously we're meeting in town hall with physical seats, and, Phil was on my left and Dale was on my right because you have your own seat. And Dale, you were just so warm and welcoming for me on the committee, really made me kind of feel at home because I didn't know you at all. And it made it a good experience for me, especially like during the meetings when there was a motion that needed to be made or seconded, he would just turn to me and wait till I said like second, I think to try to get me to talk and get me involved. So he would just be like, so like second. So I appreciated that kind of little gentle coaching. I wish we could be meeting in person. There's something, those little things about meeting in person are really important. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck, everybody.
You beat me to the punch. But I thank you for the last 5 years, Dale. It's been, a pleasure. It's been great to get to know you and to work with you in this capacity. And I think you've got nothing but the best of intentions for the town of Ashland, and you've tried to make it a better place, and you have made it a better place. And I wish you the best in the next stage of the journey. So thanks.
Dale, Dale, it was great to get to know you for a year. And miss meeting you in person for the meetings. But you kept the meeting lively and interesting. So thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
Dale, last but not the least, I should say exactly what Trisha said. When I joined, you made that so easy to kind of join experienced folks, and knowing that I hardly knew anything, it was so easy to kind of settle down in these few months. So I think thank you for being a great mentor.
Thanks.
And I just want to say thank you to Dale, for you obviously welcomed me, from the time I interviewed with, I think you and Joe in the basement. Before I decided to come to the town of Ashland. So it's been great to get to know you, and I look forward to.
You've had 2 kids since then.
And I've had 2 kids since then,
On my watch, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Get to know me a little bit, I guess. But no, I look forward to hearing the places that you go, and the journeys that you're gonna jump on. So I'm jealous.
Thanks. Emma?
I just can echo what everyone else said. And it's great getting to know you. And, maybe one of these days I'll catch one of your shows.
Yeah.
Wait, Dale, you're going on the road?
June 27th. June 27th at the corner spot.
Oh,
it's
you
gonna
are?
be beer night. It's gonna be beer night. So
June 27th, okay.
from probably 4 to 6
How appropriate.
Probably from 4 to 6 around that time frame on the 27th. I'll be June 27th playing some music.
So Dale, what's your next plan? What's your next project after this? You're gonna have so much time on hand.
I don't even want to think about it.
Thursday nights are free.
I have plenty of stuff. Yes, I have plenty.
Thursday nights are free now.
Yep. Well, there wasn't that many nights. A lot of sleepless
Designing
nights,
people's front
not very
porches,
many.
maybe.
Yeah. Sleepless nights, but not too many meeting nights. So, it was a good experience. Thank you guys, everybody. It was great.
You're not escaping, Dale.
No, I was trying to avoid
You're not
what you're gonna say,
escaping.
Mark. You're good riddance. Now
No.
maybe they can talk.
No, I'm gonna say my usual way of saying it to you. I outlast another one.
Yeah. There you go.
And look at your hair now. It was darker before and shorter.
It's the lighting. It's blonde. It's the lighting. This video. There's something wrong with the color of the video. Come on.
And then again, are we gonna be looking in the back where movies again?
Yeah.
You gotta have your gun up there, and you
I'll
gotta
have to
start.
make a list, post everything up. Yeah.
So
All right,
they let you adjourn with this idea saying the planning board 5 years, when Preston was there before, it hasn't missed a step with you. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Very nice.
On that note, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn my last meeting at 9:59 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Second that. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Quick, all in favor before it turns 10 o'clock? All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Lakshmi Krishna.
Aye.
Goodbye, goodbye.
Aye. Joe Riverton, aye.
Dale Buchanan,
All right.
aye. Passes 5-0-0. Thank you and good night.
Good night, Dale.
Bye, Dale.
All
Good
right, I'll
luck.
see you guys around. I'll see everybody
I'll
around.
All
talk
right, sounds good.
Bye.
All right.